All right, so we have our face, we have our hair, we have our clothing. The next thing we're going to do is to actually add hair with texture and detail and volume and highlight and shadow and middle tone. Remember that each area of your face should have at least 7 values. Values are our friend. So we want to make sure each part of our face, 7 values. So we want to make sure we have lots of highlights, we want to make sure we have lots of middle tones, and we want to make sure that we have a really clear shadow. We want all of these values to help us so that we can see how it makes form so it looks 3D even though it's just these flat polylines. So we are now on to step 12. Trace your hair silhouette, and then we're going to go into details, details, details. Let's get started by doing the silhouette of the top part of my hair, because I'm also going to show you how to use the arrange tool, which is really important. So the first thing I want to advise against is making a helmet hair. So say I do this piece of hair and it's really smooth like that. It's not going to look like hair. It's just going to look like a toupee plopped on top of your head. What you want to do is zoom in to the hairline. And when you do your hairline, you want to kind of break it up with a little bit of a zigzag line. And that will look a little bit softer than if you just did a smooth line. And you can use a scroll tool. This is your chance to also loop around and get those pieces of hair that kind of break out. The more you zoom in, the more points you can make. And the more points you make, the smoother the shape will be. Personally, I don't mind it having a little bit of a boxy silhouette. But you see right here where that's all broken up, that's a lot more interesting to look at than the smooth parts of the hair. And that's just layer 1. So I could take that and slide it over. Or the other thing I can do is just make it transparent for now. And this will be handy when we group all of the hair, because eventually you're going to have 50, 60, 70 pieces in just the hair. So we're going to talk about grouping and the importance of grouping here in a second. So I have that first line. The next thing I'm going to do is I really actually started this over a little too far. That's okay. Again, I want to break up this little shadow a little bit more. And this is my chance to kind of put that negative space in on top of the hair. And you can see, because I went around that space, that we'll be able to see the yellow shirt through it. Again, I'm going to make that transparent, but I know that this is going to lay on top of the other piece of hair, and I don't want that. I want this to be my topmost piece of hair. So I'm going to click that other piece, click Arrange, Order, Bring to Front. And now this piece of hair is in front of the other piece, which is how it is in real life. So you want to really look at what's on top of what before you keep going. In fact, because of that, I'm going to work on all of this half of the hair first, and then I'm going to go back and work on the other side. So I'm just going to slide that to the side so it's not in the way. And then I'm going to go through and I'm going to start first plucking out my shadows. Now, shadows usually are the furthest back in your hair. And I'm not going to worry about making these transparent just yet. I'm just going to go through. Oh, and there's a little bit of that rough texture there. There's a little bit of shadow here. A little bit of shadow here. And a little bit of shadow here. I'm going to invent some shadow there. And maybe one more up here for good measure. And one last one here. So now I have all these shadow pieces. What I want to do, as I know they're all going to be the same color, is I'm going to do what's called group them. So grouping is Control Alt G. And what this means, you also can right click and here it would say group or ungroup. Ungrouping is important too because sometimes you want to change just one of them and you'll need to ungroup. But once they're grouped, if I grab this piece that's not grouped, I would just grab that one piece. However, now if they're grouped, I can grab all of them. This also means that I can change all of them at the same time. So I can make them all transparent. I'm going to pick a color for my shadow area, and I actually want to pick that one right there. And then custom, Control V. I'm going to get rid of all those outlines. So now I have all my shadows done at once. So the next thing I'm going to do is do my highlights. You'll notice I'm not doing middle tones, and the reason is the big shape that I did will be all of my middle tones. So I just want to be plucking out highlights and I want to be plucking out shadows. And because I want that range of 7, I'm going to layer up as I go. So the next thing I'm going to do is a couple of the medium colors. Then I'm going to do a couple of the highlights. The main highlights are up here at the top of my hair. So I'm going to be working down here for a couple of the middle tones. And that also will help add, whoop, and because I double clicked, I was too close to the point when I went to move around. So if I zoom in a little bit, I can actually see a little bit better. And this gives me the opportunity to really pull out some neat shapes. Now you'll notice I'm drawing a little bit over top of the shadow shape that I did before. That will make it so that there aren't any gaps. So it's better to overlap a little bit. Just make sure you're always working up, that you're starting with those shadow areas. And then you continue to work up. I'm zooming right in. Zooming right in. Maybe add a little wisp of hair coming out. Then I'm going to finish my highlight or my middle tone. The same way. So again, I'm going to group all my middle tones, pressing and holding the Shift key, Control Alt G, make them transparent, choose the color, and then I'm going to do my middle tone, and then I'll do a little bit of the highlight. Now you'll notice because I wasn't zoomed in, that didn't actually connect. Sometimes you can get away with it. So let's just see if that will still work even though I didn't fully connect it. So I'm going to select that color. It's a little bit more gray than your art teacher likes. Oh, and it still works even though it's not fully connected. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to choose our middle tone. We're going to fill in that last color. And there we have all of our hair. So you might be wondering, how do we get this all over to the other side? So you can drag the select tool over an area, but you'll notice it selects the photo as well. If you press and hold the shift key and then just select the photo, all that will be left is the hair that you've done. And then you just group it again and slide it over. And now you have a fully volumed, valued selection of hair, like so. Then the next thing you're going to do is just go through and do that on the other side of your hair, making sure you start from the back with your shadows, work your way up to your middle tones, do your highlights, and then do your base fill of middle tones last. And that will help fill in this whole shape. I'm not going to make you watch this part, but um, you can feel free to like toggle back and forth through the video to kind of see how I went around the shape. And don't forget to break up those shapes and don't just make them big, long, fat rectangles. All right. Happy hair shading.